Terry Mills, thanks for joining us. What did you make of the election result on the weekend?
Well, I called it a miracle too. I didn't expect that, but I feel greatly relieved for the future of the country. But thinking locally, I think there were some significant messages for us to attend to in the Territory. Many thought that Lingiari would go better than it did, and I think it's telling us that there is a need to understand the bush better than we currently do. Those Indigenous voices need to be heard and understood, and for some humble assessment as to why there was such little support for Jacinta. Up in the top end, you would have thought that the CLP would have done better, given how terrible the situation here is in the Northern Territory. So they think it's a bit of a gain that they didn't lose. But it's in fact that CLP didn't win. And, you know, I tried many times to provide assistance. I did behind the scenes. But they were having difficulty getting enough support on the ground. And that's a concern, particularly when we've got an election coming up next year. It's just over a year and 3 months' time.
So where does your old party stand now? They hold one seat in the federal parliament. They hold 2 seats in the Northern Territory Parliament. They look like they had a pretty ordinary weekend here in the Northern Territory. I mean, is the CLP on its deathbed?
Well, I don't spend too much time thinking about the CLP. I have made genuine approaches to the CLP to talk about how we can turn our collective attention in the Territory to the Territory Labor government and make sure that we're properly positioned. But there hasn't been a sufficient response for me to work on that front. So my attention is more on the Territory community and getting a read on where people are at. They're pretty annoyed with both sides of politics at the moment because everyone seems to be talking about everything as a political problem. Well, we've got a very serious economic problem and a compounding social problem across the Territory, and particularly hidden in plain view out in our communities.
Well, you did write on your blog on the weekend, and you said in this blog post, a change of government here in the Northern Territory is almost certain if a robust alternative articulating the views of the Quiet Territorians.
Yeah. Well, the Quiet Territorians, I think there's a great mood of encouragement across the electorate, across the country, that the quiet people, the people who are quietly and desperately concerned about the future of their communities, actually have a voice. So I've just been speaking to a group of seniors, and they're talking about everything as about the government, or the government won't do this, or the government won't do that. And I said, in fact, you are the ones that give voice to government, and you can speak up. And so I really think that the mood is such that if there is an authentic alternative, and the CLP could be involved in that, but, you know, we can't wait forever, and the community won't wait forever. And I think the obligation is for a response to occur, and I'm prepared to be part of that, because I said I came back into politics to render assistance at the scene of an accident. And I'm saying that the Territory politics currently is the scene of an accident. We haven't actually been able to get our footing. We've got an untested Labor government that is doing an atrocious job with the economy. People aren't even bothering to engage them anymore. So bad is it that they're not even in conversation with them. Let alone the economy. The social climate of the Northern Territory is so parlous, and people have got such little hope that it's not the political system that's going to fix it, it's people. And so I'm starting to think that there's going to be a wind of change, and that's where people will start to feel that they've got the confidence to step up and to give support to people who may be an alternative. As I said, the CLP could be part of that, but that's up to them. They've taken a long time to work it out.
Let's not beat around the bush, though. The thing that everyone wants to know is what you are going to do. You've formed the alliance with Robin and Yingia. But, you know, we know before Christmas you had discussions with the Nats. There's more speculation today about the possibility of the Nats setting up here in the Northern Territory. I mean, is that something that is likely to happen now, that you are going to join the Nationals and basically challenge the CLP for opposition status and for that robust alternative, to become that robust alternative that you're talking about, to challenge the Ghana government at next year's election?
Well, it's only Tuesday, and I think in the light of what happened on Saturday and leaving a group this morning and saying, yeah, I still believe in miracles too, that the community is the one that will provide the robustness of a response. People are over a political response. And so we've got to allow new voices to come in. So in answer to your question, I reckon that it's the community that are going to be it's going to be required that we respond to them. So what vehicle is that? Heaven knows. But I'll tell you what, in the north of Australia, I think we still have a political problem. And that is we've got a Labor government in the Territory, we've got a Labor government in Queensland, and a Labor government in Western Australia. The north of the country covers those three. And I think there's going to be movement in each of those three states in response to the the federal election. And I'm watching very closely what happens. Need to be part of something that is locally relevant, but I think it must be nationally significant. I can't answer it exactly at the moment because I don't want to get ahead of this because people are so cynical about the political process, and I think there is now mood for a very authentic response to a very real problem we have in the north and in the Territory in particular.
Have you had any of those discussions, any further discussions though recently with the Nats?
With the Nats, over the weekend, of course, I had a discussion with many, but just in response to the election result, but not in terms of in the manner in which you've described. It's just
this option's still on the table, though, isn't it?
Well, it's one of the considerations, absolutely. But what's actually needed is for us to have our collected efforts on the Territory Labor government. You know, you've got Robin Lamley and myself, former leader and deputy leader. We're only independents by circumstance. We don't really enjoy being independents. We actually want to get on with the job because we're concerned how Territorians are feeling about this. So we're going to carry that concern all the way through. We think there needs to be a response that's satisfactory to the community. So we're working on this to make sure that it does line up with a fair and reasonable response to what the Territory community expects.
But there's been 3 years now since the 2016 election where really if the Conservative side of politics wanted to unite, it could have. That hasn't happened. I mean, why hasn't that happened?
Well, that's not a question for me to answer because I have spoken to the CLP. They claim that they've spoken to me, but when I heard those claims, I thought I'd better go and investigate because I wasn't aware of them. So I went and spoke to them and explained to them why I was back in politics. I was here to try and fix politics, just as Gunnar said he was going to try and restore people's confidence in politics. Why is it that you've not spoken to me? I helped Ganley behind the scenes, but I couldn't do it overtly because there's something strange in that crowd. They just don't seem to be comfortable with Robin or I. We've done nothing to cause them any offence. I think the offence lies on our side. We're happy to get over that, but we've done everything that we can. What more can we do?
But given that animosity, if that's the right word, is still there towards you and Robin from some within the CLP for whatever reason, and given that the CLP's performance on the weekend was even worse than some people expected it to be, isn't it now time for you, in the best interests of the Territory, if nothing else, to actually form a party or join the Nats or do what you're going to do to offer that alternative to the Labor Gunner government?
Well, as you've described it, I think it's pointing that way. But you know, I guess instinctively I'm a conservative. I would like things to be people to work together. I'd like to bring people together, and I've endeavoured to do that. And we sort of kept quiet during the federal campaign because we didn't want to distract. The federal campaign is over. It's only Tuesday, and yes, we're working on projects that, in the spirit in which we've described, the community expects a response to this, and it must be a response that the community endorse and understand.
But you talk about working together. I mean, look at what happened in North and Central Queensland. Labor was roundly rejected. The National Party, the LNP, was supported. There were swings towards them there. Yet here in the Northern Territory, that didn't happen. I mean, would there be a better case for the Conservatives if you were working in with those people in North and Central Queensland, as opposed to being a separate party that really appears to have lost traction?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. And that's what I would like to see. But you've got to line up a lot of ducks here, but we're going to have to line those ducks up fairly quickly because we've got a Territory election coming, a Queensland election and a West Australian election. And I think there is a conversation that is very much alive, but will be brought to some kind of conclusion fairly soon. I'll come on Sky and tell you all about that, but that's later.
So what does it look like in the 2020 election? As we go into the 2020 election, what do you think?
What do I see?
Yeah, what do you see?
Well, I can tell you that I've thought about this personally. I came back to complete something that I believe I started, and I thought that maybe I'll just gee up the troops and get everyone organised and then go and do what I was doing before. Well, I've made a decision. I can announce it here on Sky. I'm contesting the next territory election. I think it's important to do that because let's say this is a scenario. CLP think they're doing okay because Labor's doing so poorly, but that's not actually the right indicator of whether you're doing well or not. Now, if we follow that through and there's no sort of alternative, or the CLP haven't had an adjustment and brought Robin and I in, and so we're still sitting on the outside and Jerry Wood's gone, then you get a whole flush of new people in the parliament, right at a time when we need some experience to be able to steer us through the worst economic situation we've ever faced. Forget the bombing and the cyclone, but we are headed for real trouble. And what's happening in our communities, they're breaking down, let alone having a discussion about what's happening behind the scenes. So I can't, in good conscience, walk away from this. And so I've thought about it, and in the last couple of weeks I've decided the completion is to go to the next territory election. In what form, Matt? That's a conversation for a bit later.
Thanks, Terry.
That's all right.